Where do the angels call home? 'Cause there are messengers among us, but I know not where they roam. And where do the demons reside? 'Cause something sinister's inside me since the day I've been alive. It feels like the center of the universe. It feels like the narrow space between heaven and earth. Feels like a sparrow falling to the ground. Feels like the cosmos hung its head down and cried.
Just as the first rays of light warmed the horizon, the mists of another place invaded Henry's dream. Tossing, turning, his mind was troubled as he was taken deeper into the dream. Henry could hear screaming behind him as he ran. In front of him, Johnny was yelling for him, "Hurry up! They are almost here, Grandpa!" The sounds of a great battle could be heard all around. Running over ridges and sliding down rocky slopes, the two had to continually duck for cover from the silver birds. Then in a moment's pause, Henry could see, in the distance, over the ridge, giant silver buildings appearing over the canyon walls, as if they were watching him. As he looked at them, it quickly became obvious as they turned in place, they were alive and watching him. Finally, they came to a ledge, and Johnny screamed. In the valley below them was a great, towering, silver obelisk-like Washington's monument coming up out of the ground. Fear shook Henry to the core as he watched it unfurl its giant wings. The wings were not unlike the silver birds that pursued them. He and Johnny turned and ran once more. Looking behind himself to see the terrifying sight once again, he heard Johnny yell in front of him, "Get in here, Grandpa! Get in here!" He went to turn his head back and... "Pardon me, sir. The Major asked that I notify you that breakfast is ready." Henry jerked to see Private Huckins above him, gently shaking his arm to wake him. Groggily feeling the lingering effects of the dream, Henry responded back, "Yes, thank you, son. I will be there directly." Breakfast was a quiet, uneventful affair. No one wished for a repeat of yesterday. Megan presented her plate with sunscreen on. The Major nodded, and the day began. Lunch and dinner came and went, and so did the next day. Johnny was not feeling well, so Megan took her son to the town doctor with Josh and Andrew, who were seeking food that the army did not make. Henry's reluctance to give a date forced Washington to announce that he had 2 weeks. After that, all the personnel would be redeployed to other assignments. Henry then made another attempt to have a conversation with his daughter, and even tried to get Dave involved, but nothing worked. So Henry decided to ask about her plans for school concerning Johnny, waiting until everyone but Dave and the army cook had left the mess tent. "That's my call," Megan emotionlessly responded back. "I know, honey, I have been just a temp..." Henry never got a chance to finish his sentence. He saw something silver flash next to him at high speed. In a sudden flashback to his dreams, he ducked to avoid a silver bird. As he did so, he felt the wind of it brush his hair. He looked up to find an irate, screaming Megan with a silver saucepan in her hand. Shaking it in his face, "You will not take my son away from me!" she screamed, as she then turned and threw the saucepan against the tent wall in a fit of rage as she stormed out. Startled by the event, Henry was helped to his feet by Dave, who just walked back in. Word of it was starting to spread around the camp when Major Watson came running down the hill toward Henry. He started talking the moment his feet stopped. "Sir, they found something." Megan was within earshot of the news and quickly changed her course. Henry, a little excited, glanced at her, turned, and followed Watson. If Megan could have found a way to compete with her father in this fast-paced walk, she would have. It even irritated her now to walk behind him. When they reached their destination, they all stood next to a flat stone canyon wall of semi-smooth stone. It had a large crack that was wider at the bottom, but extended nearly 100 feet above them to a closed point. Everyone looked at it, and then Megan spoke up. "What? I searched this spot nearly 10 times already. There's nothing here." Sergeant Buckings then spoke up. "That's what we thought too, ma'am. But Private Huckins got desperate. Personally, I think he was looking for shade. and slid into the crack a few feet. "What did you find, Huckins?" Henry asked. Huckins, a little unsure about the comment regarding him hiding in the shade, spoke up. "Not totally sure, sir. I could not see it, but I could feel a round circle in the stone with markings in the middle. I'm just not skinny enough to make it that far." Megan, without hesitation, and still feeling angry at her father, ripped the flashlight out of Huckins's hand and declared, "I am." Before anyone could say anything, she was already sliding into the crack. She kept feeling around with her hands and searching with the flashlight, desperate to have some victory. After a moment or so of feeling highly confined, her fingers felt something. Everyone on the outside waited. Finally, they heard her yell, "It's another one! It's another army logo!" Watson yelled back, "Is there any message with it?" "No, but it looks to me like this stone slab was once farther away than it is now," Megan responded back. Henry, who could not take it anymore, spoke up, Why do you say that?" Megan paused long enough to gather her sarcasm. "Because, my dear General, my flashlight is reflecting off something up ahead, and unless our army guy was as wide as a rabbit, this entrance was once a lot bigger." After pulling rank on the phone and threatening to come down to someone's office, the Army Corps of Engineers was finally released to the site for their assistance. Captain Jackson of the Engineers quickly devised a plan to use stone saws to cut the chunks out, widening the path to a full 3 feet. This was a wet saw with a blade like a chainsaw and a substantial engine. It was flown in via helicopter with a large tank of water to cool the saw. Lunch was brought up to Megan and the men because no one was willing to leave the site. By 13:30 hours, the last block was almost cut, and Megan was running on emotional fumes. Captain Jackson then ordered the saw to be withdrawn. Turning to General Mullins with a salute, "The place is yours, sir." Henry, Megan, and Major Watson grabbed flashlights and eagerly walked in. The narrow crack was now wide enough to accommodate a full-grown man. Saw marks scarred the walls, but they could all see that the Corps of Engineers had expertly preserved the Army logo on the wall. With flashlights on, they all stepped into a small room. Over the millennia, windstorms had brought a lot of sand in through the cracks, covering parts of the room but leaving other parts undisturbed, with the exception of a thick layer of cobwebs. On one side there were small nooks carved in the stone. In the center of the room, partly covered by sand, you could make out a crude stone table. Then on the far side was a rock shelf protruding from the wall. As Watson's flashlight scanned the area, he saw something reflective and walked over and picked it up. With a sad look on his face, he turned around and remarked, "Well, guys, I know this. Our missing soldier was a captain." Megan and Henry looked at him. "I found some half-tracks," Watson informed them as he held a well-worn, bent captain's pin. They all stood there looking over what was in his hand, amazed and stunned. Megan's thoughts were doing somersaults trying to process it all. As they looked around, they found the remnants of a few stone tools and some candles. Henry looked up with his flashlight at the walls that were covered in cobwebs. Watson then picked up a stick and drug it along the wall, pulling a lot of the webs down. Henry's eyes looked once more at the bent captain's pin, feeling a little sad as he spoke up. "This feels like a sad place." "Look at this," Watson remarked. Megan saw it first. "Formulas? Math formulas." The general grabbed another stick and started doing the same as he remarked, "The walls are covered with them. Every square inch." Pausing for a moment to contemplate what he was seeing, Henry then added with a somber tone, "Whomever this captain was, he was smart. I have a fairly good understanding of math, but this is beyond me." Megan began removing cobwebs, as she was now starting to feel strangely numb. All the anger and frustration were taking its toll on her system. Megan then uncovered something made of wood. Pulling on the edge of it, she remarked, "Guys, I think I found something," as it easily slipped from its resting spot. But it was heavy. Extremely heavy. Almost dropping it, Watson quickly jumped in to help Megan move it from its place. They both almost dropped it when Henry moved close to join them in an effort to get it onto the stone table. Laying it down and looking it over, it was obvious it was a book about 8 inches thick and 3 feet square in size. The book was covered in wood with crude leather bindings tied like a rope. As they shined the light on the side of it, they discovered the pages reflected back a golden yellow light. "Oh my God, the pages are gold," remarked Henry. "Smart man. Most likely the only thing he could write on that would survive long term, Watson remarked. Megan was saying nothing, and she tired of everything. Every comment her father spoke made her want to argue, but she couldn't get the words out. She wanted to make a comment on the gold, but couldn't do that either. Generally, books all open in the same direction. I think we need to flip it over, Watson commented. You're right, give me a hand, Henry responded back. As they flipped it over, Henry's hand could feel the rough texture of the old leather on the other side. Megan, I think something's carved into the wood face of the book. Megan snapped a little at the mention of her name, and in an effort to appear normal, leaned forward to read it. All 3 flashlights were now pointed at the surface of the book. Can you read it? The Major inquired. With very little room, for there was only enough room for Megan and her father to be at the table. Henry and Megan read carefully to themselves. Slowly, a look of horror and shock came over their faces. Megan raised her hands to her face, dropping her flashlight. She started to collapse into her father's arms as a scream formed in her throat. Henry dropped his light as well to catch her. Both carried such a profound look on their faces that Major Watson was not sure he wanted to know the answer to his question. The Major called for help, but 2 men had already arrived at the entrance as soon as he spoke the words. Megan was wailing, "No!" repetitively as they moved her and Henry off to the side. Major Watson stood back up and pointed his flashlight at the cover of the book to read the cover for himself. Herein lies the last will and testament of Captain John K. Becker of the U.S. Army, 19th Special Forces Group of the Utah Army National Guard, as well as the story of how I got here, the attack on Earth by alien forces in the year 2041 and Project Wingate, in the hopes that a future generation may survive. Lieutenant Cook entered the room puzzled. Major, what just happened in here? Lieutenant Cook, our world just changed, and this cave just became a matter of national security. Secure this room? No one enters without the express permission of myself or General Mullins, Watson ordered as he pondered the words before him. All walk work stopped at the camp. Henry carefully escorted his daughter to her tent, where she spent the next 2 hours hanging on to Johnny. Henry stayed in the tent with her, staring at the wall or at Johnny, not really wanting to move. Johnny grew restless and finally squirmed out of his mother's arms to play on the floor. Megan began to speak, but realized the need to be careful of what she said with Johnny nearby. The cold, hard shell was shattered, and all she wanted at that moment was her family. "Dad, what do I do?" she whispered. "He's here, but he's there? Oh God, how do I do this? He is no more." Johnny, who was clueless about his mother's emotional state, had found his Lego helicopter and started pretending he was bombing cities. The sounds of his playing soon became loud enough to cover Megan and Henry's conversation. Henry saw the look on Megan's face and could not help himself. He moved closer to give her a hug, and to his surprise, she did not reject it. After sitting there in silence for a while, Megan carefully whispered, "How can I be a good mother when I hate my father?" The question stunned Henry and left him with nothing to say.
When he comes with healing, with healing.
Closing her eyes for a moment, Megan barely spoke above a whisper. When did this scar become a tattoo? Hearing nothing from her father, she moved away just enough to turn and look him in the eyes. "I have learned to hate you, and have done it for so long that the pain has become like a tattoo, something I could proudly wear, an accomplishment." Her wet eyes drifted to the floor of her playing son for a moment, and then back up as she continued to whisper, "And I don't know how to get free." Henry had to shift his weight on the bench, because the little black book in his back pocket was becoming uncomfortable. He reached back without thinking, pulled it out, and sat the Bible on the table next to them. As his eyes fell on it, he knew he was being given a chance and that prayer was all he needed. Henry was a little scared, but he knew he needed to say it, even if she rejected his message. "Honey, do you remember what your mother used to say when you and Danny would get in a fight?" Megan's glossy eyes opened a little wider as the truth of what was being said was coming to rest in her heart. Yes. "Mom used to say, repentance is only a door to freedom, but it's for you to walk through it," Henry remarked, waiting. Megan closed her eyes, fighting fear, fighting hate, fighting the what-ifs that were running a race in her head. The truth of her mother's words was sitting in her heart like a long-neglected flower bed, covered in weeds, but crying out to be reborn. Time passed and Henry was wondering if he'd just lost her again. In fact, he was convinced he certainly had by the look that was forming on his daughter's face. With her eyes still closed, she said in a low voice, "All right, I will do it." Megan opened her eyes and looked straight into his. "I will do this, not for you, not for the past, but for my son, for our future. He needs a normal family for as long as he's got us. He needs as much love as we can give and demonstrate. I am doing this to be free. My heart has been burning for so long, I'm tired of it." Henry's heart jumped, and for the first time, in a long time, he felt his heart was about to leave the prison she had put it in. Megan kept looking straight into her father's eyes, as her face was more wet than dry. "Father, Daddy, can you forgive me?" Everything within him jumped. He grabbed his daughter and crushed her into his chest. Freedom came to both through the utterance of a blubbering yes. They kept hugging for a while, and then got up as they heard a tap on the tent door. It was Major Watson, looking like this was the last thing on earth he wanted to do. "Major?" Henry quietly inquired. "I'm sorry, sir, it was not my desire to interrupt, but due to the growing situation we have here, and the fact that Washington is calling—" Henry raised his hand, interrupting the Major. "I understand. This is my responsibility. Consider it taken care of." "Thank you, sir. What are your orders regarding the soldiers' artifacts in the cave?" It was the generic use of the word soldier that brought Megan out of her seat and directly into Major Watson's face. With a calm, authoritative voice, as if she herself was now the general, she informed him. "Major, that soldier's artifacts up there belong to my son. It is his last message to his people, his family, to me. I will read them and find out what happened to him and everyone else on this planet, and then, if possible, I will find his bones, if they still exist, and give my son a proper burial." "Is that understood, Major?" The Major had taken a step back, realizing he was about to tangle with a bobcat that looked like a woman. Watson turned to the general, who also looked surprised, but had a bit of a smile on his face. "You heard the woman, Major, and it sounds good to me as well." Leaving Watson, both Megan and Henry got up and walked out to the mess tent. Megan put her arm inside her father's as they walked. Henry noticed Dave and motioned for him to keep an eye on Johnny, so that the two could talk privately before he called Washington. After a while, Henry called his staff in to have them set up for a video conference with Washington, and informed them that Megan would be remaining in the room. The staff set up the equipment as Megan moved her chair off to the side so that she wouldn't be in the video picture. Before she could even get the chair part way, a young lieutenant stepped up and, out of courtesy, took over for her. With a smile, Megan politely responded with a thank you as he offered to get her something to drink. Megan smiled, asked for water, and got a puzzled look on her face as he walked away. Sitting down, she realized the fire in her heart causing her to compete was no longer there. Resting on her chair, she smiled with a little joy, watching her father, knowing for the first time in years that she was free. Time passed as Megan listened to the conversation between the officers. The cave discovery, the book, and the preliminary investigation were all mentioned. They discussed how often the future reports would be sent, and the fact that this issue was now a matter of national security. Megan soon realized that she was retaining very little of what was being said. She was just glad to be free, and very proud of her father and of her son. Her desire to read his book in the cave was growing within her. However, she felt she needed to wait for Henry because Johnny was his grandson, and she would never again rob him of such things. After the meeting, both father and daughter walked outside the tent to find Watson standing at attention, waiting for orders. Henry looked at Megan, who was trying to keep a chuckle from being heard as they walked by. With a grin of his own, Henry spoke up. "Major, stand down. The lioness has retracted her claws." Megan, looking a little red in the face with her hand over her mouth, said, "I'm sorry, sir." Watson's right eyebrow raised as he listened to them giggle as they wandered by him. Father and daughter leisurely strolled across the campground before making their way up the trail to the cave. "Megan, I noticed on the cover it mentioned Project Wingate. Where have I heard that term before? Henry inquired. Well, I don't know what the book is referring to, but if I had to guess, I would say they are talking about this place, Megan responded back. Raising his right eyebrow, Henry gave her an odd look. Explain. Well, Dad, all this stone around you, the giant vertical red rock that towers to the sky, it's called the Wingate Formation. It's the type of sandstone around you. They figure it's the hardened remains of an ancient sand dune that may have blown in from the east. Henry slowly nodded. How old? Some say millions. I'm not so sure, Megan replied. Why's that? Her father asked. Well, Dad, when you're out here long enough, digging in the dirt and rocks, you find things, strange things, that don't make sense. In archaeology, they are called OOPArts. It stands for an out-of-place artifact. These out-of-place artifacts are all over the world, and we've got them here in the southwest as well. Basically, they don't fit with the contemporary archaeological timelines or the current understanding of our world. It would be comparable to taking a modern tank and dropping it into World War I or the Civil War. Out of place, out of time, Megan answered back. Thinking her comment over, Henry responded, So, my grandson is an OOPArt, out of place, out of time. The statement caused Megan to take a little deeper breath. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. Deep in thought, they passed a sentry on duty as he saluted. Did I tell you I had another dream? Henry added. No, Dad, you didn't, Megan answered back as she looked up from the trail to the cave ahead. It was odd and quite frightening. It felt like a continuation of the previous one. We were running, and I knew there was a war going on all around us. There was screaming behind us and smoke. Johnny was yelling at me to hurry up. We ran all over the place, hills, ridges, valleys, and it was all very confusing. I kept seeing those silver birds. They were attacking us. Then, in the distance over the ridges, I could see giant silver buildings appearing over the canyon walls. It was horrifying. I felt like they were watching us. Some of the buildings even turned in place, as if to get a better look at us. All of a sudden, Johnny screamed at the edge of a ledge. In the valley below us, there was a great, towering silver obelisk, just like the Washington Monument coming out of the ground. It had wings, just like those silver birds. We got out of there as fast as we could, Henry remarked, as his eyes wandered off to the side for a moment. Looking back down again for a moment, Megan acquired a concerned look in her eyes. And you think it has something to do with this? Henry nodded. Yes, Megan, I do. It started up as soon as I got involved in this project. I think they are all clues. Silently they continued until they reached the mouth of the cave. Henry looked at Megan with a little concern. Are you ready for this? The corner of Megan's mouth came up some. Are you? A guard stood at the entrance as they made their way in. Everything about the cave looked and felt very old, except for the fact the Major had some simple lighting installed, but nothing else was disturbed. The lights left very little hidden. There were several niche holes carved into the walls, like the one the book was found in. Henry took a closer look at them and discovered more books like the one they'd already found. Pointing with his finger at them, Henry drew his daughter's attention closer. Megan, look. Megan did a quick look around the room. It looks like they're the only ones. Everything else is just stuff like tools, bits of leather, and candles. Just everyday stuff for a 3,000-year-old man. Out of place, out of time. Henry slowly ran his hand over the stone wall. It must have been hard for him? I would think so, Megan remarked. No family, no friends. Everything he knew was blown away, like leaves in the wind. I haven't heard you talk like that in a while, Henry answered back with a slight smile. Megan stopped and looked up at the math scribbles on the wall as she ran her hand along them. I suppose I haven't. I guess my winter is over, Dad, and I'm heading for spring. Megan walked over and stared at the cover of the first book that they'd left on the stone table. Her father stopped what he was doing and came over to stand near her. Her eyes were totally fixed on the first few words. Last will and testament. I feel sad just reading the first words, Megan remarked. With a whisper of a voice, her father responded back. I know. Taking a deep breath, Megan spoke up. Tomorrow I will get Josh and Andrew up here with sifters and buckets to clean out the sand. Megan looked at her father's face for a moment. But I think we should have a moment or two alone with Johnny. A quiet yes came out of her father as she carefully opened the cover of the book to the first page. It was a hammered sheet of gold, rough around the edges. You could clearly make out the tool marks that were made in the process of shaping it. Scratched into the surface of the gold, it read, "Although it is my desire that my family in the future be the first to find this, I realize that may not be possible. If I am successful, I will have altered the timeline for the better. I understand that any number of years may pass from my day to yours. So on that note, to whoever may find this book, please forward it to the nearest government authority on Earth. The contents within these pages contain vital tactical information for the future of humanity. I, John Kenny Becker, Captain in the United States Army, son of Thomas T. and Megan V. Becker, grandson of Henry Mullins and Floyd Becker, would like to convey to you this story that started in the early part of the 21st century. The following information is based on the events that preceded my departure to the past. On December 7th, 2041, on the European continent, the first wave of alien spacecraft attacked the Earth. A total of 10 ships descended on Spain and France. The engagement lasted a total of 2 hours and 8 minutes. All alien craft, except one, were destroyed. The 10th retreated back to space. The French Air Force was the first to respond, followed by other local nations. 108 jet fighters were destroyed and the city of Madrid was leveled by something resembling a nuclear bomb. Total known dead, 5.1 million. This was not an isolated event. Waves of spacecraft came approximately every 3 months to different regions of the Earth. Each attack was larger and more forceful than the last, and more difficult to defeat. Most nations began mass-producing fighter craft and missile systems, and for a time, it seemed we were winning the invasion. Please note that at the time of the early 21st century, atomic weapons left lingering radiation at the blast sites that would last generations. However, the unknown weapon used against Earth cities would only leave a radiation trace that lasted around 59 days. Megan stopped reading and stepped back to take in the reality of the moment. Henry was silent, trying to process the information that his daughter was reading out loud to him. He gently rubbed her arm and gave her a nod to continue. Megan looked back down at the gold sheets that her son scratched his last thoughts on, knowing his powerful words would change the future. With a deep breath, Megan continued. It was not until the third wave against the eastern half of North America that we were able to retrieve valuable technology from an alien craft. Although the items were small, they demonstrated a level of technology far more advanced than what humans possessed. Therefore, after several other successive waves, it became necessary to assemble the best scientific minds possible. Most teams worked around the clock to understand the most basic functions of this technology. By 2043, the rate of attacks was increasing all over the world. In the early days, the alien crafts were small in size. Eventually, they sent larger ones supported by the smaller crafts. Then in the winter of 2043, 2 events took place that forced us to take more drastic actions. The first event was a government study called the Tolman Report that concluded that at the current rate of increase in warfare, Earth would not survive much beyond 2046. The second event was the arrival of the city-building ships. The city builders were very large crafts, over 2 miles in length. They would set up over the site of a destroyed city and begin construction. It would take about 4 weeks to grow the city like a crystal, complete with a glass-like dome so hard that no known weapon could penetrate it. It was after these events that Project Wingate was transferred to me. I relocated it to this location and it became the most closely guarded project in human history. On a personal note, almost everyone on Earth had a personal memorial day when someone they knew was killed by the aliens. Mine was June 12th, 2042, some years before this date. The last of my close family passed away, leaving me with only a few relatives in Boston. They died in the third wave when the city was nuked, killing everyone. I don't know what he's talking about. We don't have any relatives in Boston or any other place. I was an only child, and so was your mother. Ah, I know. There's none from Thomas's side either, Megan remarked, shaking her head. Well, turn the page, honey, Henry remarked. Megan carefully flipped the golden page, reading on. Dad, wow. Henry moved his eyes towards the gold book. What? All he says is, "Oh, how I miss Christmas with my nephews and niece," Megan remarked. Stunned, they both stared at each other. Henry spoke first. They never found a body in the train crash. They never found a lot of the bodies. The reality of the moment was starting to settle on their faces as they suddenly spoke together. "Danny's alive," they said together in one revelation. Megan grabbed her father's arm in nervous excitement. Henry spoke once again. "Come on, honey, let's go make some phone calls." The afternoon shade from the canyon walls was starting to cover the whole camp, slowly bringing down the daytime temperatures. Henry and Megan were clocking in their second hour of phone calls and internet searches. Finally, they gave up looking for a Dan Mullins, and they found a Daniel Mullins, the right age, newly married, in Philadelphia. He worked for an architectural firm. Megan reasoned out that he just had not moved to Boston yet. Henry tried calling twice, but as soon as he identified himself, the phone went silent. With some disappointment, he handed the phone over. Megan tried, and discovered it was indeed her brother. With a little time, Megan got her brother to relax about the idea of talking to their father. Dave brought them both supper as they told stories over the phone throughout the night. When Henry wasn't talking on the phone, he was praying or writing. It had been a big day, and no one in this family was likely to get much sleep.
When he comes with healing in his wings. When he comes